The Portage Park District is often asked about the Hopewell Mound at Towner's Woods, so we thought we'd give you a little insight as to the mound and its history, as well as a quick walk to the mound, which only takes about 7 minutes from the entrance of the park, depending on how fast you're walking. Before we talk about the mound, it's probably important to mention who the Hopewell are. The Hopewell were a group of Native American that lived in Ohio from around 150 BC to AD 500. This time period follows the time when the Adena culture lived and precedes the Fort Ancient culture. They were given the name Hopewell after a man by the name of M.C. Hopewell, who owned a farm that contained many mounds that were excavated to yield many artifacts. The Hopewell people were hunters and gatherers, getting food from the natural environment, but they also farmed to raise corn, squash, and sunflowers. Archaeological studies of artifacts reveal that the Hopewell culture traded extensively to get copper, mica, pearls, and obsidian for different parts of the country. They used these materials with local materials to make ornaments, jewelry, and tools. They also used clay to make pottery. They showed an advancement over earlier cultures by their craftsmanship, making copper beads, headdresses, breastplates, pearl necklaces, carved soapstone pipes, mica, and slate ornaments. It appears that they created their culture by adapting to the surroundings and incorporating influences from the earlier Adena and Mexican cultures. The Hopewell built mounds to bury some of their dead. Each mound may have included several bodies along with ornaments and tools. Some of the mounds contain quite elaborate graves with many artifacts suggesting the importance of the people buried. The earlier Adena culture also formed mounds, but they included many more individuals added over time with a few artifacts in each mound. Evidence suggests that the Hopewell might not have lived near the mounds they created, but that they traveled to burial sites and buried their dead together at once. Most of the dead were cremated, though perhaps the most important people were buried in the flesh. The Hopewell created many kinds of mounds, from simple flat-top mounds to great mound works shaped like serpents and geometric shapes. When you arrive at the park, enter the main entrance to the trail, note the arrowhead symbol, and start following the main trail straight ahead. Just a quick note, on our right is our new gazebo, still under construction. We're very excited to be able to start using this gazebo in 2020. The discovery of the mound happened in 1931 when George Towner found an oddly shaped piece of stone. Towner dug a little deeper and discovered additional artifacts, including some copper beads, flake knives, and flint projectile points. He immediately stopped digging when he saw the remains of a cremation burial and contacted the Ohio State Archaeological and Historical Society, now the Ohio History Connection. Dr. Emerson Greenman excavated the Towner's Mound in 1932. The mound contained at least 7 burials, maybe up to 11 burials. Reports of the excavation are confusing because of the time period in which it was dug. The excavation occurred during the Great Depression. Because so many people were out of work, there was an estimated 2,000 people watching the excavation during its final days. The mass amounts of people caused a large amount of confusion about what was in the mound and possibly allowed for looting as the excavation was underway. Up ahead on the left, we see another wayfinder. We're looking for the arrowhead so that we can continue on our journey to the Hopewell Indian Mound. We'll just want to take a slight left and continue along the trail. Dr. Greenman describes 7 burials in his field notes of the excavation, with at least one additional burial being very well described in primary newspaper sources. Many of the burials were cremations with few or no associated artifacts. Most of the skeletal remains were poorly preserved because the mound was built out of gravel, which allowed water to enter into the mound and erode it. However, out of a possible 11 burials, 2 were in surprisingly good condition. One of these burials was nicknamed the Indian Princess. The Indian Princess was a nearly complete skeleton in a flexed position. A flexed position means that the skeleton was placed in a fetal position on its side during burial. This type of burial is relatively uncommon for Hopewell core sites in southern Ohio, but seems to be a more common burial style in northern and northeastern Ohio sites from Hopewell periphery. You're coming up on the left-hand side. You'll want to follow the markings for the arrowhead and continue straight ahead on the trail. After the excavation in 1932, George Towner built a cement block enclosure that was covered with a sheet of glass in order to display the skeleton that he referred to as the Indian Princess. Towner reportedly charged the public 25 cents to view the skeleton. Unfortunately, looters took advantage of the display and stole the teeth and other pieces of the skeleton. To protect the remains from any further looting, Towner covered the remains with tar paper and reburied his exhibit. Just up ahead, you'll see some fencing with the path going between those 2 fence posts, and you'll keep straight ahead and follow it up to the top of the mound. Towner Mound is lacking in many diagnostic Hopewell artifacts that would be expected to be found in Hopewell core sites. But even lacking some items, it is clear that the site belongs to the Hopewell culture because of the bladettes recovered in the excavation. Between the original excavation and today, many of the artifacts from Towner Mound have disappeared. After the excavation, Dr. Greenman was supposed to take some of the artifacts back to the Ohio Historical and Archaeological Society, but this never happened. Towner was planning on making a small museum out of the railroad switching station on the property, but this also did not happen. 1932 was not the only time that the Towner Mound was dug. In 1972, Dr. Orrin Shane at Kent State University used Towner Mound as an archaeological field school for students. Dr. Shane was unable to find Dr. Greenman's field notes, which led him to believe that a lot less of the mound was excavated than it truly was. There was no new material found during this excavation, but the students did rediscover the Indian Princess that Towner had covered to protect it. The notes also mention that much of the artifacts from the mound were on display at the Portage County Historical Society or were privately owned by George Towner. However, only a few artifacts are found at the Portage County Historical Society, and whatever happened to the remaining artifacts and the skeletal remains from the mound are a mystery.